Yeah, there, as as always, there is a very simple answer to the question. Um, and the answer is that a process of things happened. At there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. Not like all good stories. um, at the beginning, I wanted to buy a house in the countryside because I wanted my children to have that connection. Um, I also, at the beginning, didn't know if it would be possible to buy a house because I didn't know if it would be possible to find a house and to get money from the bank to buy the house. And so at the beginning, there were a lot of questions, a lot of questions. And so slowly, over a period of 2 to 3 years, we answered all the questions and we found a house and we found a financial advisor who helped us with getting money from a bank, and we went through the process of looking for a house and finding a house and buying a house. Um, that was the end of the first part. That was the beginning. Then there was the next part, which was living there. There were a number of things that happened that you you just can't plan. You can't plan these things. They just happen. Janka failed her driving test. No, no, yeah, yes. And so she couldn't drive a car. Uh, and this made problems not for me, but for her. She made these problems for herself. Uh, and so she had to travel by bus and by train everywhere. Um, this was it wasn't a big problem, but it was stressful for her. Uh, yeah, yeah. Yanka also found it hard to connect and communicate with people in the village. For me, it was not difficult because I could just go to the pub and have a few drinks and talk talk with people. Yeah. So it was not a big problem for me. Uh, yeah. Yeah. And because of this isolation and loneliness, Yanka started to feel depressed. And this caused a motivation problem for her. And this was then affecting the kids. So, because of these problems, I started to think about if we needed to change things. And I also decided that I wanted to change some things in my life because you know me, over the last 3 or 4 years some things have changed. Yeah, I think that I have a healthier lifestyle now than I had before, and this was another thing that changed. I decided to improve. Well, I think I decided to do what everybody needs to do, which is if you want to improve the world around about you, you start with yourself. And so I started with physical training and exercise and jogging and going to the gym and eating healthy and becoming vegetarian and doing a lot of activities related to focusing on making myself better and stop drinking alcohol. And when we arrived in the village, we fitted in because we were the same as everybody else. But after a year, we were not the same because I had improved certain things in my life. I also started to think about the children's future. And by future, I mean what will be in 10 or 15 years for the children. And I started to think about the girls and what will be their future in 15 years there. And I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like the presentation of potential future there. 50% of all young women are single mothers in that area. Right? So, well, yeah, it's the result of the lack of jobs, the cultural aspects, and the alcoholism that exists within the area there. And I began to understand slowly that there was absolutely no way that we were going to be able to change or develop anything there. Because when I arrived there, I thought, right, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this and I can help build a play area for children and I can, make agreements and deals with the starosta of the village, the person who's in charge of that, and I can help with things and we can grow. But I then discovered there's a very powerful reason why everything is the way that it is. And when there was a local election and 80% of the people voted communist. Yeah. We connected with some families there. The more intelligent parts of the community. There were about 4 families there. And they were all talking about how maybe in 4 or 5 years they would like to move somewhere else. Many, you can see there are many reasons. And I was thinking, I'm not going to be left here. I'm going to get out before all of these problems happen. And I started to see potential problem and then another potential problem and then why something can't be and then another potential problem and I did a little mathematical equation in my head and realized that there were going to be more negatives in the future than positives. You need to create opportunity. And want some things to improve, to get better, and that means change. And I looked at everything and I looked at the whole situation, and I always say the same thing: you can only change three things: time, place, and people. People are very difficult to change, and time you don't have much control over. So changing the place, the environment, is the best way to create new opportunities. And so it became clear to me that nothing would get better if we didn't sell the house, if we didn't move. Move meant selling the house, and selling the house maybe meant that you don't know. You don't know if nobody wants to buy the house, you can't sell the house. So you could be stuck with a massive problem for the rest of your life. Nobody wants to buy it, and you can't sell it. You're there forever. And I looked at the whole situation and decided that the house was the key. The house was the center of everything. The house was the key. And that I couldn't change anything if I didn't change the house. So I came home from work one day and I sat down with Yanka and I said, we're going to sell the house. And this is our mission in life, is to sell this house. Everything that we do every day is going to be to sell this house. If you do something and it's not to sell this house, then you're doing the wrong thing and you're wasting your time. Of course, she was a bit surprised by this conversation, but I was right. We had to do something. And so that was the mission every day for a year. Well, the situation is exactly what I explained. And so you when you want change in your life, when there's something you want that's different, if you want to fix something or make something better, you need to do a very powerful analysis in your head, or even on paper, about positives and negatives, and positives and the positives and the negatives of the positives, and the positives of the positives and the negatives and the positives of the negatives, the negatives of the negatives. And in business it's like SWOT analysis, but you do that and you find out what are the key things. What are the things that are blocking you and stopping you? And you solve those things first. You focus on solving the big problems. And the little problems are easy things on the way. They're annoying and frustrating, but you still have to do them. But they're the little things. But you go for the big things. You go for what the biggest problem is. And so I wanted a situation, or I decided that the best thing to do would be to have a situation where the future was not written, where anything could be and anything could happen. And this meant making a lot of changes, some of these very difficult but logical. I decided I wanted to make some changes in my work, and what is interesting for me is that everything that you can see in your mind is possible. And this is very powerful. And not only is this powerful, but everything that everyone else can see in their mind is possible also. Which means there are hundreds of thousands of different possibilities that you can't see that also exist. And I'm always constantly amazed by things like, where does this cup come from? How did it get here? Right? I mean, one of the reasons why this cup is sitting on my table is that about 40 or 50 years ago, two people met and had sex, and they produced children, and their children grew up, and their children started this company, right? And all the billion experiences between then and now, and right up to the point where there's now a coffee shop opposite my office, and that you went there this morning and you brought me this coffee. Thank you very much. It's very nice. And so when we look at what we can do in life, we know a lot of what is in the future for us, because we know how we are, we know our habits, we know what we like. If I like chocolate ice cream, I'm going to eat more chocolate ice cream in the future, right? It's the way we are. And the inspiration and the beauty and the sparks and fireworks of life come from the possibilities created by different people coming together to share ideas, because I have my path in life and you have your path in life, but when these paths cross, things change. And I wanted to create a future for my children where there would be a lot of crossovers, a lot of meetings, a lot of opportunities, and not just not just any city. It needed to be a Western cultural environment. The vision of people in this area here is that they can see the horizon and nothing more. It's just the way it is. And the vision of people in the Western civilizations is that the horizon does not end. It continues. And so this creates endless possibilities. And I actually decided that I wanted a future which, in the past, I had this idea that the future must be secure, the future must be certain, there must be all these plans and all this organization and all these facts. And that's great for a lot of things. But I decided that for my children, I didn't want them to have a fixed way of thinking. And I wanted to give them as much and as many experiences as possible. And I would like with them to, every 2 or 3 years, change things. And uh, I don't mean destroy something. I mean build on experiences. See something different. Because my son's vision of the world, and this is a really clear example, where the first 3 years we lived in a flat in the city. The next 3 years we lived in a house in the countryside. Now he's in a different country, having different experiences with different people there. And it doesn't matter when you're young. It doesn't matter where you are, because you don't have the prejudice that you have when you're older. You don't have the problems that people have when they're older. And you can, when you're young, you can travel, you can have experiences. It doesn't matter what you do until you're in the modern world. It doesn't really matter what you do until you're about 18. It matters that you have positive experiences and that you learn things and that you grow. And then when you're 18, you want to go to university and pick a subject and study, or work and start a business, or you want to do something different at that point. But up to 18, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are, as long as you're having experiences, as long as you're meeting people, as long as you're growing, as long as you're learning and sharing things. That's what's important. And the stronger relationships are built later in life. You said something which was very real for me, which is that my character is done. And so it doesn't matter what happens to me. It doesn't matter. It's not so important at this moment in time. Yeah. It's not so important what my situation is. But it is very important. It's not so important what my experiences are. It's much more important that the children have an experience which will make them think later in life. What they are experiencing now will cycle back or turn around in 20 or 30 years if everything works out okay. I mean, who knows about the future, but the experiences that they're having now are not things that I can teach them, because you can't teach experience. You can only have experience. And the experience is more powerful than any kind of instruction that you can give to people. One of the things that I want to teach my children is you can have your dreams. You can have all your dreams. I wanted my children to experience living in the countryside in Slovakia. They experienced that. I want my children to experience living in a big house in the north of Scotland. I want them to experience living in a big house. Now this, if you look at what is important to learn in life and education and the whole spectrum of things, living in a big house is not there. It's not there. And it's not something you can teach. You have to live it. Because what happens when you live in the big house is that you start to see things differently. You perceive the world differently. the air is different, the climate is different, the wind is different, the sounds are different. Everything is different. And you're telling somebody, oh, everybody is different in the world, doesn't really mean anything. But when you experience differences, when you experience different languages, different places, different ideas, different habits, different foods, different hobbies, different ages. So I am lucky enough that I can give my children different experiences. A lot of children don't get different experiences. If there's one thing that's true about me, it's that when I make a decision to do something, I do it. And I do it 100%. I had a few thoughts yesterday about life and quality of life and future. And I had a realization that there are only a few limited positive possibilities in the modern world for good quality of life and a high standard of living. And what I mean by this is I had a long discussion yesterday about differences in culture and perspective and possibilities in different places. And we talked a little bit before about simple thinking. And if you add simple thinking plus job possibilities and opportunities, and you think that you want your children to live somewhere where they are challenged to be more intellectual and they have good job prospects, and you realize that the world has around 200 countries. But if you want your children to live in a country with a high standard of living, we reach a little bit of a problem, because there is basically only half of Europe, Canada, the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. That's it. That's it. And when I say half of Europe, what I mean is Spain, France, Germany, Austria. Well, I use question mark, okay? Depends what your job is. You know, if you're it depends on your job. Yeah. A lot of people very happily doing crazy stuff like working in IT and with computers and things. So Spain, maybe in Spain I also include Portugal. Spain, France, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Norway, Sweden, Finland, although we've got big problems in Sweden right now. Swedish culture is they opened the doors to immigrants, and they are having massive problems. And then it depends. They actually have a social system that works. And you can also pick, Holland, Belgium, but as as Nigel Farage, the former British minister, says, that Belgium and Holland are like non-countries. They're like not really countries because they don't actually really do anything. They're just administrative centers. Anyway, and then Britain. So there are less than 15. There are less than 15. From 200, there are less than 15. Forget about Central America. Forget about South America. Forget about Africa. And these are big places, right? Huge continents. Forget about Africa. Forget about India and the Indian regions and your Afghanistan and your Pakistan. Forget about the Middle East. Forget about Russia. Forget about China. Forget about Southeast Asia. Um, the beach is great for lying on, but if you want to do something constructive, you have to do it somewhere else. So, and so I was thinking a little bit about. I was thinking that's terrible. That's terrible. That there's only less less than 7% of the planet is less than 7% of the planet has a standard of living which is good for the average person. Less than 7%. When I walk through Europa shopping center and I look at the chocolate and the cakes and the sweets and the ice cream and I think that these people don't you don't understand you're in that 7%. You're yeah, you don't understand that 93% of the planet is living in absolute poverty. And and your biggest problem is this phone or this phone or oh yeah, yeah. You don't you 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 dumb ass fat fuck. I'm sorry, but I mean, when your only problem is what flavor of ice cream to choose, what type of car to buy. Yeah, I'm just thinking about you. You go into the supermarket, even if you only have €5, you can buy so much, and you have a choice of such a big selection. You can buy fish and cheese and different types of bread and yeah, you can have whatever. You can almost have whatever you want. And there's a American film director Oliver Stone um, made a series of films about the Vietnam War. These were um, fictional films, not real, not documentaries. They were films, but with a lot of real experiences in the films. And in the last film that he made, an American soldier marries a Vietnamese girl, and they go. I didn't see the whole film, so I don't know everything, but I remember this part from the film. They go to America to live in America, and they go to a supermarket, and the girl has never seen anything like this before in her life. Her whole life is fields and preparing the food and living in a house made of grass or something like that. And you know planes, cars, houses, buildings, clothes, food. And so I'm very aware of how much money I spend on certain things. I'm very aware of how much I spend on luxuries. And And I'm living in a country where my standard of my standard of living is okay. Uh, but even here, because this is the middle, right? This is the middle. You can go to have nothing, or you can go to have everything. This is kind of in the middle here. And if I went, for example, if I went to Canada or the United States, and I told them how much money I make a year and about my quality of life, if I told them how much money I make a year, they would fall on the floor laughing, and like they're like, "How can you live on that?" Right? Because basic basic starting salary in the United States will be $50,000 to $60,000 a year. Basic starting salary for a basic job. For a basic job. Yeah. Yeah, and then you're looking at 50 to 60 to 100 for something. And if I lived so if I lived there, I would make 10 times more than what I make here. So yeah, yeah, of course, but if I but people there wouldn't even understand if I told them how much money I make and that I have this quality of life from making this little amount of money. And this is still in the middle. It's not even, or this is, this is the higher percentage. This is the edge of the 7%, right? This is in the 7%. I'm in the 7% of the planet that has a good standard of living. And I realize that 93% of the rest of the planet doesn't have anything. It's and we fly airplanes over villages in parts of the world where these people don't even have food, and we're flying airplanes over their villages. We're flying stealth fighters and military drones over their villages. The amount of money that it costs to put this plane in the air for 60 seconds is more than these people have in their entire lives. Their entire Yes, yeah, it's more than the whole village has in their entire lives. Everybody all collected together just to keep this plane in the air for 60 seconds, maybe even 30 seconds, just to keep the plane in the air. Yeah, and when you when you begin to understand this, when you begin to perceive this, when you begin to see this, you uh you realize that the the world is full of different ways of living and different experiences and different. Yeah, yeah, if you have enough cows in your village, and you got enough milk and meat for everybody. So um okay, here's something else, right? I mean, this is why experiences are key to everything. This is why. Yeah, yeah. When I first moved into the house, I had to do a lot of reconstruction work on the house. No problem, right? It's normal, right? Normal rebuilding is normal. It's okay. And there was a heating system which was an old system, so I would. Yeah, and with this older heating system which is there, and you realize that 90 to 95% of the houses in the village have this older heating system, which is not very efficient. But I got up at 5 to 5:30 in the morning. I cut the wood, I prepared the wood, put the wood into the fire, made sure everything was burning and everything was okay, so that everybody would have hot water, and the radiators would be working through the winter and everything would be warm. Yeah. Right. Right now, I'm in a small flat in Fonchorda. Hot, cold. Don't have to do anything at all. And I'm like living in paradise. I'm like, I like to have a hot shower. Hot shower. There's a lot that we can learn from these differences. And so many people have no thankfulness or gratitude or understanding of how lucky they are to have a warm place to sleep with triple glazed windows and central heating on, off, and yeah, you don't have to do anything. Yeah, now um 2 nights ago, this is another crazy thing. 2 nights ago, I walked home in the evening, and it was about minus. It was more than minus 15, minus 16, minus 17, minus 18. It was cold. So it was so cold that I lost the feeling in my fingers. I had gloves on, yeah, and I was walking home, and it takes about 20, 25 minutes. I lost the feeling in my fingers as I was walking home. I started to is here, and then it gradually, was. And then I was walking past Bila, the supermarket and I went into Bila just so that I could feel my hands, because I lost the feel. I lost, like, I couldn't, the basket for shopping. It's like I couldn't pick it up because I couldn't feel my fingers. It was crazy. I had no feeling in my fingers, and I went home, and I went home, and I Skyped with my family in Scotland, and I said, what's the temperature there? And they said, oh, today it was plus 15. Plus 15.
Scotland. I thought that there's cold in winter. Scotland.
It was plus 15.
Oh, here is 15 too. But
I'm so cold that I can't feel myself, and in there it's plus 15, and this is something that you can't understand unless you experience it. And so the aim is to give my children as many different experiences as possible of different life and different lifestyles and different cultures and different places. And because as we said, in one sense my life is finished. It's not so important. It's not so important what I need. My job is to prepare my children for the future.